From Conestoga College, welcome to the Talent Hub Alumni Podcast, your trusted gateway into the success stories of graduates turned industry experts. I'm your host, Kim Crackle, a student affairs professional with over 11 years of experience supporting our amazing students. Join me as we explore our guest's journey from academia to the professional world, empowering you, our listeners, to unlock your path to greatness. So settle in, relax, and get ready to be inspired. I'm so pleased today that I have the opportunity to speak with Jolene MacDonald and share with you, our listeners, her story. Jolene is the founder of Accessibrand for over a decade. She has known that people with disabilities needed a different work model to be able to give their full potential to their careers. Accessibrand is based on Jolene's 20-plus years of knowledge in the graphic design and marketing industry, as well as her 17 years as a successful entrepreneur and award-winning designer, creative director, and illustrator. Top that all off with her own personal disability experiences, and out comes an innovative model for a design, marketing, and communications agency. She's also a graduate of Conestoga College's graphic design and advertising program and has participated in the Conestoga Entrepreneurial Collective's Venture Lab and Gig Lab. Jolene is an advocate, wife, and mother of 3. She has volunteered with Little People of Ontario, Rare Disease Foundation, and sits on the Grand River Accessibility Advisory Committee. She helps other parents advocate and find their voices. Jolene, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Let's get started.
Thank you.
So my first question that we've been asking our podcast guests, and I know you and I have had a sidebar conversation about this, is what is your favorite book?
I think I remember saying I love books, but I don't have time to read many. I have about 3 or 4 on the go. So I don't know that I can pick one favorite one that stands out.
You know what? I think a lot of people are in the same boat as you and have the TBR, the to be read pile.
That's a large pile.
Yeah. next to their sort of like bedstand or at their desk at work. Yeah. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, the one I am sort of reading right now is Decolonizing Design. And she is a professor out of OCAD in Toronto. So I'm pretty excited to finish up that one.
Oh, very cool. I think we talked yesterday, my colleagues and I, about creating like a library of all of our guests' favorite books. So we'll have to add that one to our virtual bookshelf. So let's get started with some questions. I mentioned in your bio that you're a graduate of our graphic design program. What led you to Conestoga College and to take this particular program?
Sure. I was originally accepted into Conestoga for graphic design in 1994 when I graduated high school. I think I was really unaware of what design was at the time because it wasn't really integrated into high school. So my passion was really just drawing. So I had hoped to go to OCA, now called OCAD, and did not get in, and I was devastated. So I was accepted into Fanshawe for fine art at the same time as I was also George Brown for sign design and Conestoga for graphic design. And I decided I needed to move away from KW because I was born and raised here. So I went to Fanshawe for a very short stint and then reapplied and came back to Conestoga and was in graphic design and sort of never looked back.
Amazing. When you think of your time as a student at Conestoga College, is there anything that sticks out to you as something you're really proud of that happened while you were a student?
100%. I was lucky enough to win a competition in second year going into third year.
Oh, wow.
So I designed, I came up with a design for the Young Volunteers of Ontario medal. And so I won, which was really cool, and got to go to Toronto, meet the Lieutenant Governor, and was presented with one of the actual medals. So I think it's the 7th medal inducted into the province of Ontario. So that was really cool. So that very much stood out for me. And then I was in the newspaper for something else to do with another smaller award. So, but that 100% stood out for me.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
It was a big deal back then when I think about it. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So that to me sticks out quite a bit, because my next question was, is there a moment in particular that's impactful, either personally or professionally, that happened to you? So, you talked about winning that huge award. Sort of what were the outcomes of winning that award? Like, did it open other doors for you while you were a student, or did it make you think about your design in a different direction?
I think, at the time, the program was graphic design and advertising. So in third year, you sort of decided, are you going to go into graphic design or are you going into the advertising stream? I really loved logos and illustration and more of the simplistic style rather than doing big layouts. And I could always come up with creative, but the ad sort of style was not for me. So I think that was another piece that probably made me decide that was the venue I was going to go, like that direction. Because I had experienced, another college and another sort of designer, like I was fine arts. So it was, drawing, painting, sculpture, photography. It wasn't a great experience there, not just because of the college, nothing wrong with the college, but it was the experience of the content. And when I came to Conestoga, it was like I walked in that first day and I was like, oh my gosh, this is where I was supposed to be. Just as the support, and I found what I love to do. I loved art and I loved business, so it was really that combination. So I thoroughly enjoyed all 3 of my years and really loved the teachers, and still I'm friends with some people from the course. So I think overall it was a great experience, and that's why I'm still involved with the program today.
That's amazing. So you mentioned you're still involved with the program today. Mm-hmm. You are, I believe, one of our PAC members.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
I was for many years, but now I just do portfolio reviews, and I am a guest speaker every year.
Excellent. So it's really, I love when I hear of our former graduates from the program, how they still weave a connectivity between themselves and their time at the college. It must be really interesting to do the portfolio reviews for these students and sort of seeing the evolution of technology that the students have the opportunity to use, even compared to when you were a student to now, to, new things that are coming through.
Yeah, definitely. I said, we've had a changeover in the professors and the instructors over the years. I think, when I was at Conestoga, we didn't get to use a computer till second year, and they weren't really like great computers then. So I was that, I think it's a lucky thing. I had to learn to do things the old school way, and there was some new stuff. So I had to do things by hand, and I had computers. So I sort of had the opportunity to see both worlds. And now, when I see the portfolios, the level of quality, and Conestoga for design is still a top school for students that come out. It's always awesome to see the progress that they do. But obviously the projects have changed over the years, and the different students and things like that as well. But still, the quality is there.
Amazing. Let's talk a little bit about what you've been doing since you've graduated from Conestoga College. Like 2 years.
Yeah.
What is one thing in your career journey to date that you weren't expecting to have happened? Kind of took you by surprise.
Well, funny enough, I think I should tell you, I'm actually self-employed 21 years this year.
Oh, okay.
So I think that was probably, I need to update my website maybe, or my LinkedIn, one or the other. So I think the turning point for me is I always wanted to own my own business. I started out in an ad agency, got hired right off my co-op out of Conestoga, which was awesome.
Amazing.
Then I was a designer for the city of Kitchener for a few years. Was surprised that I became a mom a little earlier than I had anticipated. So that was a big change. And then started a business with a partner. So I thought that was probably going to be my end game. But then life changes. I became a single mom for a few years, and then got married and had 2 more kids. And when you have 3 kids, life is complicated sometimes. It's exciting, but it adds a lot more. The birth of my youngest daughter, I think, is what changed everything. My son, obviously, I have 2 daughters, so 22, my son is 14, and my youngest daughter is 12. When my youngest was born, she was born with a rare form of dwarfism. So like your life changes. You're at doctors. My mental health, I wasn't sure. We didn't know if she was going to survive or not. So there was a lot of stuff to deal with. So I think my focus on my career became less. And then I had to decide what I wanted to do with my future at one point, because lo and behold, I got sick when she was, I'm trying to think now, probably around 6, like just starting into school. I was having a lot of issues. So I was diagnosed with something called Ehlers-Danlos, and it is a disability. It's sometimes visible, sometimes not. Today it's not so visible. But yeah, I had to totally pivot. And so I partnered out of that business. It was really a difficult decision because we were, friends for a long time, and I had to choose that business, which I had built from scratch, or my family. And so that was a really big pivot for me.
Wow. And I think so many of us, a lot of our identity is in the work that we do, right?
Oh, yeah.
And especially as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, you put so much of that blood, sweat, and tears into building it. It would have been really hard for you to let go.
Yeah. It was 100% my identity. People would call me by a nickname to do with the name. I don't want to throw that out there because I no ill will by any means. But like it took a while. People always knew who I was. I was out and about. I was involved in a lot of things. And then it was not there anymore. I was totally different and didn't have that friendship. And I was not well. 2 years I spent on the couch, barely able to work. I made it by, but I couldn't sit at a desk, and I didn't feel like I had the support. And then I was also trying to manage my kids. My youngest has a lot of, things going on in the year. And when she started school, all of that changed because so much more advocacy for accessibility and things like that. So lots of changes.
Oh my goodness. Going through all of these changes in your life, and your children, and being a single mom for some time, and a marriage, and starting a business, leaving it, who did you lean on for support? Did you have like a mentor that you could go to, or who was your biggest supporter and kind of helping you during all this time?
I'll say my husband first and foremost. And not just to make him feel better later, but I mean, he's always supported me. I'm very lucky that, he goes, "Oh, you have an idea? I guess we better listen. We're going to go support that." He's asked me now not to change my life again, but it could happen. So I'd say
no promises.
Yeah. Like if I didn't have that, my parents always growing up too, they were, even being an artist, like they were like, "Yeah, you want to do that? Go do that." So not everyone gets that. So I would say, and I have a very small group of friends now compared to what I used to have when I was younger, and they're always behind me. So I am very fortunate to have that group. But I would say, as far as mentors, I have a couple in business, but more since I've launched Accessibrand, that I've found more mentors again. I decided that it's different running a business without a partner. So you still miss those opportunities. But yeah, I have some really great business mentors now.
It's great that you'd have, the family support and, the business sort of support that's coming in as well. When you reflect on your journey of going from, a graphic design and advertising student to, your agency work when you had a partner, and why did you start Accessibrands? What was I think I can guess what some of the driving force was, but can you tell us a little bit about what drew you to beginning this?
Yeah, 100%. Because, at the end of the day, it looks like I started another business like what I had to a lot of people. The advocacy for my youngest, for her physical accessibility, sort of drove me to realize how much disability is not included in everyday society. There's the social model versus the medical model. But then I was doing work for Creative Day for Social Good, which it used to be called Create-a-thon. My other company, myself and partner, brought it to the college back in 2010, I guess it was. And then I think it was 2012 or 14 before we handed it over and it became Creative Day for Social Good. I met Edward, if you're listening, from KW Accessibility. He was our client for the day. And he's like, do you know that people with disabilities can't access media? And I'm like, what? What do you mean? So being a graphic designer, I was starting to learn. And I'm like, well, how can I do things the same way, knowing that I'm excluding people? We don't do that anymore. Like, we shouldn't be doing that. But unfortunately, that's happening with disability right now for a lot of people. We've made lots of progress for, race, gender, sexuality, but not disability in the same format. So I think it was really, the journey was, I met other parents who'd left their careers. I was struggling to work because I had all these appointments. My son was diagnosed with ADHD in the middle of that, and I got that diagnosis through him. And my oldest daughter was having heart condition issues. Like, it was just all things. And I'm like, how do you do what you love but help others and find flexibility? So Accessibrand means accessible branding. And so I still get to combine my passion for design and, logos and things like that. But then I met more people with disabilities that weren't working. And I'm like, well, how can I get jobs for them? And so that's where the user testing came in, and document remediation and training and teaching. So now we are apparently the only one in Canada. We're the first accessibility-focused design, marketing, communications agency. But I run it all from home, and almost everybody's a contractor except for a few we have on staff. And it was all of that learning. I had to come up with something that worked for me, but I recognize it probably worked for a lot of other people, and it has.
That's amazing. And, I keep thinking, like, how did you manage all of that? And I think
I don't.
Well, I think there's a lot of, like, you just put one foot in front of the other, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. And you move forward, and some days are a little bit easier than others. And
I've met wonderful people since I relaunched this in 2017. I relaunched in 2020, and that's because of going through the Venture Lab program. Mm-hmm. I have still coaches from there that I can reach out to, which has been awesome. And just having, I also was able to medically manage my condition, which has been like life-saving. I don't think if I had that, I would be even sitting here talking to you today. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I have an awesome team. Like, Accessibrand is not me. It's all of us. So I think if I didn't have that, we wouldn't be where we are either. So, I mean, any small business has lots of ups and downs, and you need a good team.
So speaking of, like, ups and downs, we hear, oftentimes we hear of, a lot of people like to paint things like in a, rosy shades of pink, and everything's great and stuff. What have been some of the obstacles of, like, just from even foundationally starting your own, design firm? Like, what have they been, and how did you overcome them?
I think accessibility, people only know about it from legal parameters most of the time. So they're not thinking about it from a personal perspective. So I think when we first launched, people didn't really understand the concept 100%. It was maybe a little bit too advanced. Okay. Now it's been a few years. People are like, oh, yeah, I need to do that. I get it. Like, it's more than just putting in a ramp or, sticking some sort of overlay on a website, which please don't do that. They're realizing there's more to it, and people are realizing that we are all going to be disabled one day, and that it's not a bad thing. It's just a different way of working. And I think COVID really brought a lot of that to light for people, the hybrid role, being remote completely. But I would say that's probably where I would say we've had the most. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, as much as, COVID kind of threw all of us for a loop, I think it did open a lot of people's eyes to, having the opportunity to work from home, mm-hmm. and that it is something that people can do and be very successful in doing, where maybe pre-COVID we, had the philosophy of, if I can't see you doing your work, then you're mm-hmm. not doing your work, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my goal in the beginning was everybody was a freelancer. that's inherently sounds great because then you give opportunities and it's less work maybe for me. But there was not ownership in the work. So that was one of the fallbacks. So we had to change that model. And then even some of the services, when I say accessible design, people are like, oh, yeah, well, everyone does that. I'm like, but they don't. And I think that's still the piece that is hard to explain to people. Yep. They still think it's a tech thing, like, oh, I'll just do things the way I've always done and then run it through this software and make it accessible. It doesn't work like that. And then I think more opportunities for hiring people with disabilities to do testing of actual communications materials. Mm-hmm. We haven't been able to do that as much as I would have liked yet. We're doing it, but it's another drawback. But COVID certainly gave me all the opportunities because I met so many people that couldn't participate in things. Like I ended up in Access to Success. It's like a startup venture in Toronto. There's no way I could have gone. So it was all online. Venture Lab became all online. Yep. 100% was able to participate. I couldn't do that with chronic pain and fatigue and, things like that. And then with my kids and trying to manage it. So
amazing. So let's talk about future Jolene. Can you tell me about what are your future goals and aspirations? Like what's next on the horizon for you?
I always have lots of ideas. I just need funding to do it. I would love to be able to grow this business so that I don't have to work as much, but still be core to my vision of not being a sellout. I want this to be about people with disabilities are the ones who are doing the work and help people change their opinions and perspective on disability. And not be ashamed that that's a bad word or think that it's something negative. That's a big vision for me. I would love people to stop being so worried about accessibility and then being afraid to talk about it. I think that's a big part of me. I have a couple other ideas that I would like to do. I'm not going to say them out loud, but they could be really life-changing for our industry. I'd love to train more other agencies to do what we do. In the beginning, I was not sure about that because, are you giving away your ideas? At the end of the day, we're not going to change our opinions on disability if people don't integrate it into marketing and communications in every single facet. So lots more ideas for that coming too.
Amazing. Where do you see design going in the next 5 years, especially, from the accessibility point of view? And, are you hopeful for the next 5 years of some good change that's going to happen? And
I think I'm always hopeful because I'm still pretty involved as much as I can be with students, even though it might just be local. I try and have a voice wherever I can and to teach younger, newer designers about why they should do it. There's a lot of ego in our industry because they think that, doing something a certain way looks really cool or it might win an award. But I often talk about, well, if you're not actually selling what the clients are, reaching potential sales audience, which in Canada, they've just released new stats. It's 27% of the Canadian population identifies having a disability.
Wow.
So if you don't take the opportunity to improve your skill sets, how are you doing justice for your clients, I think, at the end of the day? But I really would like to see the ministry mandate accessibility being taught in the programs. So that's not quite my mandate to get involved in that, but it needs to be done. So I'm hopeful because we are seeing more professors, if they're interested in it, they're integrating it. I've had some conversations with different universities and colleges. Spoke to a committee in Leeds University over the summer online, which was really cool. So it's a discussion. It's a big part. So I'm hopeful.
And do you think the new sort of crop of designers coming up, they're taking your message to heart?
I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know that I can answer that because I think they see it. But again, with a lot of life instances, until you've experienced it yourself, it's not that important to you. And I think until it's made to be learned and marked on in your journey, that it's not as critical. So I think they know about it, they're learning about it, and they're interested about it. But I think we still need to see a lot more of a serious focus on it.
Well, I think I don't disagree with you. I think it's, you don't know how important it is until you need it, and then you're too late almost.
Yeah.
So I think it's just wonderful that you are bringing this awareness. I know sometimes you probably feel like you're just banging that drum and who's listening, but, I think a lot of people are starting to really catch on to it.
Yep. I do see the industry changing a lot. LinkedIn especially. I mean, yes, the algorithm will cater to your interests, but there's a big wave, and you can see the discussions. And, yes, there's lawsuits and litigation. Our own governments need to tighten up the reins a little bit because we have the laws, but they're not necessarily reinforcing them the way they should. But we don't want to lead with lawsuits and litigation, which many companies do. We want to lead with education and empathy because you're going to need it. It's just like the curb cut effect everyone talks about. Curb cuts were made for wheelchairs and such. Well, we all use them. They're all beneficial. So it benefits all of us.
Yeah. So let's get to some advice. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this. And my first question is, what advice do you give to, prospective students, current students, new graduates, that may want to do something, in the same vein that what you're working on is?
I talk to a lot of students. We usually have 2 co-op students a year. And like I said, I do the reviews. I only do portfolio reviews now from an accessibility perspective. I make a point of spending that half an hour or hour with them or whatever, talking about the things that I see would work and wouldn't work. So they would maybe rethink about how they would design that in a different format. So as far as advice is I want them to think about how we do not exclude, well, it still happens, race, gender, sexuality for the most part, religion, all of those things, but it's disability is still part of that. And a lot of people just need to think differently. So that's a lot of my advice, is to remember, if we're working towards inclusion and diversity and equity, then we need to also include disability, and accessibility is beneficial to our community, but to everybody.
Excellent. And I'm going to go back to your entrepreneurial spirit here, and I'm going to ask you, if we have any, budding entrepreneurs and people that are in our venture lab and in our gig lab that are looking to start their own business, what advice do you give in terms of that direction?
There's been a couple things, but I know everyone's like, oh, it's so cliche to say just go do it. But honestly, you will live with regret for the rest of your life if you haven't tried it. And do not be afraid of the failure that can happen. It's happened to me. I'm not ashamed of it. Some things work, some things don't. You have to pivot. But if it's something you really feel passionate about, you have to fight your own fear and that feeling of wanting to be sick and not necessarily having a paycheck to go try it. You need to try. Don't be afraid to try.
I love that. Thank you, Jolene. You're such a powerful voice and advocate, and we thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. So, listeners, if you are interested in learning more about how Accessibrand can support your organization and create truly accessible marketing and communication materials, please visit their website at accessibrand.com. You can also follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and not to worry, we will make sure that all the links are available in our show notes for you. Jolene, once again, we really appreciate you taking the time and for all the work that you do to help make this world a little bit of a better place for people and for everybody.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care.
Thanks.
We've reached the end of this episode of the Talent Hub Alumni Podcast. Thank you for listening. We appreciate your support and hope that this episode fills you with inspiration and serves as a catalyst for finding your passion and path. For resources and materials to help you propel your career and employment, head over to conestogac.on.ca/talent-hub. If you're a Conestoga grad or know one who has a great story, email us at talenthub@conestogac.on.ca. Links will be in our show notes. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, and connect with us. We love hearing from our listeners and value your feedback. Remember, what you do here counts out there.